Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Kevin Cottam. He is a global nomad, as he calls himself, professional speaker, facilitator, leadership coach, and author. And we'll learn from him a lot about how to adapt, innovate, and lead with resilience, as that has been inspired by decades of Olympic level coaching and also nomadic research. Welcome to the show, Kevin.
It's wonderful to be here with you, AJ, and thank you very much for the invitation to be with your crowd.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show, Kevin. Welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll learn from you about the power of the nomadic mindset. We'll learn all this and also talk about your book. So in this backdrop, we'll have our conversation. But before that, let's learn a bit about your journey, your background, so that people know who they are listening to.
Sure. I'm Canadian, and I come from a very big, started off in a logging camp, very Canadian, and a very small camp, which was about 400 people on a big lake. And so then I have moved multiple times throughout my life. And I have been living on 4 different continents, 15 major cities, and it's been a global experience of being this global nomad from time being. I started off my world, though, in figure skating, and I was a figure skating champion in Canada, and then I went on to become a dancer, and I combined the two into choreography so that I was working with elite figure skaters, national, world, and Olympic champions. And then I was able to extraordinarily be able to direct and choreograph a closing ceremonies for an Olympic Games, which was an incredible highlight of my life, and it still is today. And from there, I went on to other multi-million-dollar shows as a director and choreographer and conceptualist, big figure skating shows, which were rather theatrical at the same time. And then I somehow got into coaching when I moved to Brussels. And from there, I got into speaking and also facilitation. And then at some point in 2017, I got extremely bored with what I was speaking about and bored with life. And with that boredom, what happened was I found the nomadic mindset, and had a great mentor, Frederick Herron, and he helped me to refine whatever this nomadic mindset is and what I needed to do. So I wrote a book called The Nomadic Mindset, Never Settle for Too Long, which I did research, so field research in Mongolia with nomadic cultures, and also with the Maasai in Kenya and the Berbers in the Southern Sahara in Morocco. And I then eventually went to Namibia and spent a bit of time with the San, Bushmen of the Kalahari, as well as the Himba. But it all came together in a leadership book, and so spending time with also leaders as well, globally in different industries. And it was fascinating to see that this nomadic mindset came to be. Most people think, okay, digital nomads, right? So this is not about digital nomads, but it can be, they have the term as being digital nomads, moving around to places which have a great digital and internet coverage and is very reasonable to live, and that's where they work in a nomadic way. But I will get onto that in a moment. But let us. That's where I'm at. That's where I come from, and I'm very excited to be here. And I have been in India, and I've spoken in India, and I like India very much. My very first time was back in the 70s that I was in India. Whoa, a long time ago, before most of you were probably alive. Anyway, but it was a mind-blowing experience, which introduced me to a new way of thinking, or a way of thinking and a way of being, which I had never experienced coming from the Western culture.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And great to learn about your India connection, and since a long, long time. So you have observed the world, you have understood it. So let's at the moment understand the nomadic mindset. When you talk of nomadic mindset, what is that nomadic mindset? Does it mean a mindset for different people? You also mentioned about digital nomads. So help us understand your understanding of the nomadic mindset.
Sure. So I think what's really important to know here is that the nomadic mindset is really a mindset which is is based in movement. So that's the most to focus on. And that doesn't mean just geographical and physical movement. All right. It means the movement of the mind. That's what I realized when I was in Mongolia doing research. A woman said to me, I said to her, what is the meaning of nomad? And she said that it is the movement of the mind. So that is where we start with the nomadic mindset. It's the mind, the heart, the gut. So it is the internal movement and it's the exploration within us. But it is a mindset which is based in adaptability, flexibility, resilience, and also seeing everything as opportunities, finding new paths, community, collaboration. So all of the buzzwords that we hear in organizations today. And this is really what it focuses on. And what it is what's important for us, that a nomadic mindset lives within every single one of us. As does, when I did my research, I looked at two other mindsets. The nomadic mindset is one, the builder mindset, and the settler mindset. We have all three of these which live within us. Of course, you may start to think, okay, from those terms, that you can already understand what are possibly the strengths, the attributes, the behaviors, as well as the shadow sides. And it's very important to know that they all three within us. We have a dominance for one more than another. And what is also important is that we can move from one to the other all the time. It depends on the situation, the conversation, our situation in life, what happens. And so, for example, right now, we have the chaos which is going on in the world, not only geopolitically, financially, within organizations. What the uncertainty? What do we do? How do we lead? How do we get our KPIs? How do we hold on to our jobs? The also the tension of the burnout, all of these aspects. But how do we do that? We have to deal with it, and that dealing with it is one of these mindsets can also trigger. The nomadic mindset will help you to move out of all of that because it is based in expansion. And what happens when we have all these situations and chaoses and uncertainties and unknowns is that we get into a very narrow thinking. So there's a wonderful quote that came from Mongolia from a young student. And she's told me about the situation about nomads. And she said, I long for the rolling golden dunes of the Gobi Desert and the wonderful Mongolian steppes. And she says, this is where freedom is. This is where you need to be adaptable. Everything is always shifting and changing. And she said to me, nomads think vastly, act narrowly. So that is something that I think is really important for all of us, is to understand that as a coach, one of the things that happens to us is that we get into this very stuck and narrow thinking. This is not the time to do that. That is the instinct, which is an old instinct, which is from our old conditioning. But the instinct one needs to have and wants to have is to go wide and to be exploratory, to be curious. That is one of the most important things which will get you through this crisis, and which will also, through the chaos, and also just feeling better about yourself, and also the well-being. And also the other thing which I think is very important, which is connected to the nomadic mindset, is nature. Nomadic cultures are the most interconnected individuals in the world. They live off the land, but they're also people who see their animals, and the animals speak to them in a way that when they ask, when is it time to move, they say, well, we wait for our animals to share with us exactly when it's going to move, the weather is going to change, when is time. So there is this very strong interconnection, which I think, AJ, for most of us, we've lost this interconnection. And that is the senses of who we are, and the senses which are alive around us. And nomads, and especially when I look at, for example, the Maasai in Kenya, when I watched them, when I observed them, when I walked with them, every part of their senses was alive and open. They could hear anything that was around them for a long distance away because they practiced that. It's their life. But they could see very, very far away as well. They could see anything. They could feel and observe anything in those 360 degrees without having to turn around. It was really an amazing thing to realize that coming from a city is that we have lost a lot of this. We've lost a lot of the purity of life. And this is what can bring us back to understanding of a clarity of a bigger life than we have instead of a narrow life. Do you remember when we had COVID? And COVID put us into a lot of discomfort because we weren't allowed to move around outside a lot of the time. We had to have masks. We had to do all sorts of things which were really annoying and very upsetting for us. But in that, we need to learn that that uncertainty and discomfort is exactly where nomads are on a daily basis. Certainly, we are not on an ongoing basis, as because we live in big cities, we have, different types of jobs and aspirations and things like that. But it's not really about that. It's about life. It's about movement in life, movement of you physically inside of you, your thoughts, your creations, your innovations. This is what comes from being nomadic, so that you can see and examine something that is unusual. One of the things that actually was very interesting to me, AJ, was that when I was in Mongolia as well as in Morocco, I asked this question. In our jobs, we like to say we're specialists. We're specialists at this one thing, this one profession. We're specialists, and in as a as an as a trainer, but I don't do anything else. I just do that training. That you're asked to do something else in the office. Can you do this? No, 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 no. That's not part of my job description. For nomads, is they get very curious when they're asked to do something different. They go, "Wow, that's something new. I could explore this." So exploration is what we've also lost, and we can bring it back because it's all living inside of us. Absolutely. You just need to be wanting to explore the ideas of thoughts, the different professions, even different locations, all sorts of things. So there you go. That's a long story, but hopefully you got something else to think about and chew on.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, uh, see, you talked about earlier on in the beginning, you talked about boredom. And then a lot of people think, digital nomads we talked about, moving on from one thing to another. And then there is, a whole concept about purpose also. So if people have this nomadic mindset, or even in terms of moving from one thing to another or one place to another, if we understand it that ways, where does purpose stay with us here? How do we look
Perfect.
at purpose from this movement angle, Kevin? Help us understand that.
Yeah, I mean, purpose is an extremely important thing. So purpose is also about what is the meaning of life? What are you, as one of the most important things to say to yourself is to ask, what is life asking from me? So this is an exploration into itself. So defining your purpose, most people say, I don't know what my purpose is. And so let us look for what is a purpose. But the basis of that comes from that inquiry, is that investigation, it's that curiosity, it's that exploration, so that it expands your ideas of what's really important to you. So I love this aspect of this question, what is life asking from you? And that can then you follow it backwards to find out what is the purpose. But to do that, you need to go nomading, is what I like to say. You need to go nomading to find. You need to look under the rocks inside of you. You need to open up the different crevices. You need to look up all of the different history that you've had. What has been driving you or connecting the dots? And that can help you to find out, what is life asking from me? And that, I think, is one of the important things. And so w- this is a great question, AJ, about purpose, and also about how do we find that and how does the nomad find that. When I would watch the nomadic people, when I would see I could see this real intent of purpose. And their purpose is, first of all, is to survive. But they also think their purpose is to not necessarily have a grandiose life and have a variety of possessions and ownership of so many things. It's a very simple life for them, is to be able to see, allow their children to grow and to be able to expand into the new world. And that is important. But it's also about caring for their animals. What is their animals? Because their animals are their currency. So they need to have a purpose to how do we care for them? How do we understand them? Because they are what are going to help us survive. So there's a variety of things there, but it's all it comes down to, I believe, is what is life asking for you or for me? And from that question, then you go nomadic, is you really go into exploration. When I was in Morocco, I had a conversation with a Berber physicist, and I asked him a little bit about this aspect of the Berber culture. And he said to me, you need to have a nomadic mindset to connect the dots of life. Why? Because it's exploration, it is curiosity. Because our life is set up with so many rich stories. Wouldn't you say, Adrian? That's what you do here, is finding stories. And so
Yes.
those rich stories is very, very important for us. And so from that, it is really great to find out then the connecting the dots. But it's not the, connecting the dots of our life is like a headlines, multiple headlines. But that's not it. It's what's underneath the headline. It's what's underneath. It's like the iceberg. What's underneath the iceberg? That is where you find the richness of your life, which is part of the purpose of your life. And that is what is the meaning.
Absolutely, Kevin. Absolutely. Let's understand this way. A lot of people, when they think of nomads, nomadic life, they think they do not have any responsibility. They just have to survive, exist, move on from one place to another. Some may even look at it from a carefree life, maybe irresponsible life also to some. And many people think, okay, that sort of life is not bad for me because I've got technology in my hand. I can operate from anyone, anywhere, and that is where I will be only responsible for myself. I don't have to be accountable or responsible for anything else. How are these two different things different? Means, how do you look at that perception of the nomadic life as well as perhaps nomadic mindset? Or is it that people have to learn the actual gist of the nomadic life and nomadic mindset to get the true meaning of and purpose from that?
Okay, so I think that there's a variety of things there that you have talked about, and responsibility, and this is very important. Okay, so if I look at nomadic cultures and the ones that I studied, most of all, but when I look across, I believe it's very similar. First of all, they don't move on an ongoing basis. They move seasonally, and they don't move without reason or strategy, because it is the survival of the community, it's the survival of their animals. And that is the most paramount for them. So there is a huge amount of responsibility, especially for the chief or the elder. And for them, it is, as leadership, it is for them, they believe that leadership is the major focus of a leader is to create and build new leaders. And so that's what they do. So there's a huge responsibility. There's a responsibility to the families. There's a collaboration of all of the projects and the way they have their positions of what they do in life. And so there, it doesn't look frivolous. It's not frivolous at all, because they are on a survival. When they wake up, will there be, for example, in the Masai Mara, will a lion appear and so take your life or take the life of some of your cows? This is important to know. So they need to have their alertness very much so ahead of them, and their listening and all of their stillness, as well as observation skills and their intuition. So if you think about that and you transfer that to contemporary society and where the nomads, Nomads in the contemporary society, what I would suggest, and that is that there is a lot of responsibility for their lives. It's not just completely frivolous, wandering from here to here without any sort of purpose. No, the nomadic cultures that I have are completely purposeful. And today, what I think that we are missing is that solidarity of community, of collaboration. And that is what we're being asked for in organization is collaboration, creating communities, which are teams. And it's this thinking nomadically, but we're thinking of it in a way which is more builder-esque, very strategy, very linear. There is no linearity to the path, as you know, of life. There's no linearity, right? It's always all over the place. Where's the next path? Oh dear. But it's about being able to adapt and turn on your heels quickly so that you know when to adjust. And that is something they're very sharp about. I think for most of us, we dulled ourselves a lot of the time and we become very comfortable. So therefore, we don't feel that we need to adapt very fast because something else outside will help happen. So there, my survival will be fine. So we are giving away that. In nomadic cultures, there is no giving away of the responsibility of life. It is extremely powerful.
Absolutely, Kevin. And so, what is it that modern leaders can learn from, nomadic traditions, from how they operate, especially during their transition? So, how can leaderships learn from that transition of nomadic, nomadic cultures, nomadic mindset, and learn from that to thrive and not run away during tough times? How would you like to explain?
This is a great subject and a great topic because it's what happens, and I will share with you that the majority of people, if we give an example, I would suggest that Steve Jobs was extremely nomadic in his thinking and the way he did things and the way he thought of strategy, the way he thought of his business, the way he thought of exploring. He always was curious, exploring ideas, finding new paths in this direction or that direction. But he was very atypical and he allowed that fluidity and freedom of movement to happen and he encouraged it. But most people that I come across in the work that I do with leaders and also with teams is that they are mainly builders. And builders are very strategic. They're very focused on fiduciary. They're very focused on building a product and a business. They are finding everything in a very sort of also tight way. But what happens is that there are so many different systems that they're all working on, which are old systems. We are working on industrialized revolution thinking still. And even in some of the old systems, which are falling apart today, and we need to find new ones. That's why we're having a hard time with disruption of AI and digital transformation, is because we keep going back to thinking how it is we're going to get all these people together, how it is that we're going to be able to find new pathways. It's not going to work for our KPIs. We need to push, push, push. No, we need to find this openness of exploration. And what is a very valuable thing that nomads do is they don't work all the time. And when I say work, is they don't handle all of their animals all the time. They pause to reflect upon what's happening over here, what's happening with this part of the family, what's happening in the system, which is not as diverse as ours and crazy. And to tell you the truth, one of the Maasai said to me, he said, Westerners, you are so congested in your minds. And I thought, wow, that's a fantastic thought. Yeah, we are congested in our minds. We have so much going on. So for leaders, you need to learn to be curious. You need to allow your people to be curious, to be able to adapt and to encourage adaptation. You need to also embody this adaptation. You need to be not run away from risk or fear of change because it's all transition. It's to see that a negativity is an open door and a sign to new possibilities and opportunities. And that's exactly what they're seeing. So, for example, with the Berbers, I will share that they see everything as an opportunity. Even the desert is an opportunity. Even the wind is an opportunity. And they say the wind and the sand and the changes are changing all the time. And so you must be able to move with them. But we have become locked into our situations. We need the fluidity and the flow, which is actually really what is often taught in in Sanskrit, and also is taught in the Indian culture, in the Hindu religion, as well as in Buddhism. All of these are talking about the freedom of the soul, and that is the freedom of the nomad, of that exploration. One of the things that I find that, I have a framework that I invite the leaders and everybody else to use, and that is the following. I call it the Nomadic Transition Framework, and it's in 5 stages or 5 steps or 5 keys, as I call it, to opening up your nomadic mindset. And that is, the first one is to explore, to make sure that you explore all sorts of ideas and thoughts. And then that will help you to start expanding your vision of the world and perception of the world, and the world of this idea or thought or position or career or whichever. And then something starts to emerge. Something new and fresh starts to emerge. And then you start to experience a shift, a change within you. And then the last is evolution. The evolution, it means in its entirety, is to find something new, in the flow of something new. And that is the evolution. And that is what we're moving towards, not only transformation, but evolution of our systems, our mechanisms, our geopolitical situation. We're looking at is from climate change, whatever. We need to shift our ways of being if we're going to survive. And I say that the nomadic mindset is within you, and you can open up to this to help you to see a bigger world than what you live in today.
Absolutely. There is much to learn about these things from you. And so let's get to your book, The Nomadic Mindset, Never Settle for Too Long. Why never settle for too long? Human beings look at stability, Kevin. Then once stability comes in, your security needs are met, then you look at self-actualization. How do you calibrate these two things? That Maslow as well as your book.
Yeah. So, one of the issues are that we have become too settled. And in that settling, we don't like risk, we don't like change, we don't like a variety of things, but we love community, we like our comfort, we love our stability, we love nothing that is uncertain, because it shifts and changes and discomfort is with there. But remember what even Shiva said: in the valley is the place of learning as you climb to the top of the mountain. And this is extremely important. And you need to keep going back to the valley to learn. And that is where discomfort is, in the valley of the learning. And this, we can remember, is very nomadic in its thinking, because that is how we explore, flow, and have the freedom of movement. And it's all about movement. So, in that, why never settle for too long? Because if you settle for too long, you will get complacent. You'll get too comfortable. Yes, settle long enough to reap the harvest of what you have, but then to move on. So, for example, elite athletes. Elite athletes, they realize that when they are too settled, they will not improve their sport. They will not become better and efficient. They will start to lose competitions because they are not pushing the boundaries of what they can. So that is the never settling for too long. If you think about it, if you just settle your life, that's fine. That's fine. Depends on your aspirations. But if you have bigger aspirations, you can only settle for as long as you are before you need to move to the next step. Right? It's like in the transition framework. You explore, you will settle for a long enough time in that before you need to expand and go all the steps. And those are the keys to get you there. So that is what is the nomadic mindset, never settle for too long, is to keep this understanding of movement.
Absolutely. And who is this book for, Kevin?
This book is for leaders. However, what I suggest to you, it is actually a book for everyone. And it is focused on leaders simply because it has a lot of case studies from leadership, which are related to the chapters in the book, which always have a nomadic part and also an organizational part and team part. So it's about rethinking leadership in many ways, is how can we deal with, for example, digital transformation, the disruption in jobs, the disruption in trade, and also, of course, the supply lines and things like this. Everything, the interconnection. I mean, they're now finding, right? You can't disentangle right away. There's so much interconnection. And so, therefore, this idea and nomadic thinking can help you. If you're in a builder thinking or settler thinking, it's going to drive us exactly what we see in the papers, very driven in a way that is very disheartening. But that's not the place. It is about, well, what's the opportunity?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There is so much to learn from you, Kevin, about all these things. And I'm sure a lot of people would want to connect with you. A lot of leaders would want to connect with you and learn more about this. A lot of people who want to learn from your book. What is the best way for them to connect with you, Kevin?
The best way to connect with me is through my LinkedIn. And hopefully you have LinkedIn, and you just need to go in, and my name is Kevin Cottam, and you can find me there. You can connect with me. You also can book a time to speak with me if you wish. And I also just want to share with you that I'll be doing a 6 episodes of an online around the nomadic mindset, and it's called the Nomadic Alchemy. And and it's an awakening about what is the nomadic mindset and how can it help us in our daily lives as well as leadership.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you so much.